The first breach came without warning, a tear in reality that looked like a wound in the fabric of existence itself. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched in horror from the observation deck of the Quantum Dynamics Research Center in Buenos Aires as the sky simply unfolded. It wasn't a conventional invasion. No massive spacecraft descended. No alien armies marched through city streets. Instead, reality itself seemed to ripple and distort, like water disturbed by an unseen hand. Geometric patterns of impossible complexity began to form in the sky. Crystalline structures that defied Euclidean geometry, shifting and changing with a precision that suggested intelligence far beyond human comprehension. Elena's research team, 12 of the brightest quantum physicists from around the world, stood frozen. Dr. Marcus Chen was the first to break the silence, his voice a trembling whisper. Those aren't just spatial anomalies. They're computational matrices. Before anyone could respond, the first wave hit. Entire city blocks simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not obliterated, simply removed from reality as if they had never been. People caught in the dimensional shift disappeared mid-motion, their bodies fragmenting into probability waves that dissipated like morning mist. The lucky ones died instantly. The unlucky found themselves stretched across multiple potential realities, consciousness shattered and scattered. Elena's team worked frantically. Sensors went haywire, quantum detectors spinning into meaningless patterns. Marcus began recording data with a manic intensity, his fingers flying across multiple holographic interfaces. "The dimensional frequency is unlike anything in our models," he shouted. "It's not just moving through space. It's rewriting the fundamental constants of our universe." Dr. Aisha Okoye, their lead computational theorist, was already running simulations. Her dark eyes reflected cascading lines of impossible equations. "They're not just invading," she said, her voice clinical despite the chaos outside. "They're optimizing our reality, like debugging the computer program." Elena knew her team was humanity's best hope. The Quantum Dynamics Research Center had been established precisely to study the theoretical boundaries of physical reality. They were the first line of defense against something humans couldn't even comprehend. Then everything went to hell. A dimensional pulse ripped through the research center. Elena watched in horror as her colleagues were torn apart, not by physical violence, but by something far more terrifying. Marcus was first. One moment he was standing next to her. The next he was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. His body fragmented into probability clouds, mathematical equations replacing flesh and bone. Aisha was next. She managed to activate a quantum shielding prototype moments before the pulse hit. Her body remained intact, but her consciousness seemed to scatter across multiple potential realities. Elena could see her, or fragments of her, existing in dozens of simultaneous states. When the initial wave passed, Elena found herself the sole survivor. The research center was now a geometric nightmare. Surfaces bent at impossible angles, rooms existing in multiple states simultaneously. Equipment sparked and shifted, quantum computers displaying equations that seemed to write and rewrite themselves. In her hand, almost forgotten in the chaos, she clutched a small metallic artifact. It had fallen from one of the dimensional rifts during the initial invasion. Unlike everything around her, it remained completely static. A perfect, obsidian-like object with surface patterns that seemed to move when you weren't looking directly at them. Outside, Buenos Aires was gone. Not destroyed. Gone. As if it had been edited out of existence. Elena knew three things with absolute certainty. Humanity was under attack by something that didn't view destruction the way humans did. These invaders, that Karnak, saw reality itself as a computational problem to be solved. She was now humanity's most important asset in understanding and potentially stopping them. The artifact in her hand pulsed with a soft, almost imperceptible light. Something told her this small object was far more important than anyone could imagine. Humanity's darkest hour had begun. 3 weeks after the initial invasion, survival had become an art form of calculated desperation. Elena Rodriguez huddled in a converted Cold War-era bunker beneath the Andes, surrounded by a ragtag team of survivors who represented humanity's last hope. To her left sat Jack Harper, a former Special Forces strategist who had been court-martialed for an unauthorized mission that had inexplicably saved hundreds of lives. His weathered face bore the scars of multiple combat tours, but his eyes held a razor-sharp intelligence that rivaled any academic. Beside him, Zara Chen, a 17-year-old quantum computing prodigy, looked more like a typical teenager than a potential savior of humanity. Her fingers danced across multiple holographic interfaces, breaking through encryption systems that would have stumped entire government cybersecurity teams. She had been homeschooled by her uncle, Marcus Chen, who died in the first invasion, and had inherited his brilliance along with a burning desire for revenge. The fourth member of their unlikely team was Dr. Victor Laszlo, a 65-year-old retired cryptographer who had spent his entire career decoding the most complex communication systems in the world. His hands, once steady enough to crack military-grade encryptions, now trembled slightly, a reminder of the trauma they had all experienced. And then there was their wild card, Kavera, the exiled Xarnak scientist, who had approached them with information that could change everything. Kavera was nothing like the humans had imagined an alien would look. More crystalline than organic, their bodies shifted and refracted light in impossible ways. When they spoke, the sound seemed to emerge from multiple points simultaneously, a linguistic representation of their multidimensional nature. "The invasion is not what you believe," Kavera stated, their form shimmering with what could only be described as emotional turbulence. "The Xarnak Collective sees your universe as a computational problem. You are not being conquered. You are being optimized." Elena held up the obsidian artifact recovered from the research center. "And this, what is its purpose?" Kavera's crystalline form pulsed with a complex pattern of light and shadow. "A navigation key. A quantum entanglement marker that allows precise dimensional positioning. In the wrong hands, it could destabilize entire realities." Jack Harper leaned forward, his military training evident in every calculated movement. "How do we use it against them?" Before Kavera could respond, Zora's systems erupted with warning signals. "We've got incoming," she shouted, her fingers flying across the interfaces. "Xarnak dimensional probes are scanning this entire region." Victor Laszlo's cryptography skills kicked into overdrive. He began constructing a complex quantum encryption field, layers of mathematical complexity designed to mask their precise location. "We need to move," he muttered. Now, their escape plan was audacious. They would infiltrate a Xarnak research outpost located in what was once southern Chile, now a landscape of twisted geometric impossibilities. The outpost represented their best chance to steal the advanced equipment needed to understand the invaders' technology. Kavera provided crucial intelligence. The outpost uses a quantum entanglement network. Traditional stealth techniques will be useless. We must think differently. Elena studied the artifact, realizing it was more than just a navigation tool. Its complex surface seemed to pulse with potential, like a key waiting to unlock something momentous. As they prepared for their mission, tension crackled through the bunker. Each of them knew the stakes. Humanity's survival depended on their success. One mistake, one moment of hesitation, could mean the end of everything. Jack checked their improvised weapons, devices that manipulated quantum uncertainties rather than firing traditional projectiles. Zara continued monitoring the Xarnak's dimensional scanning patterns. Victor worked on breaking through potential communication barriers. And Kavera watched them all, a being whose motivations remained tantalizingly unclear. "Why are you helping us?" Elena finally asked, unable to contain her curiosity any longer. The alien's form rippled. "Because the collective's method of optimization is fundamentally wrong. Diversity is strength. Potential cannot be measured by a single computational model." As they prepared to move out, none of them knew that their mission would be the first true counterattack against the Xarnak. The first time humanity would show that they were more than just a problem to be solved. They were a force to be reckoned with. The real war was about to begin. The Xarnak research outpost rose from the distorted Chilean landscape like a nightmare of geometry and light. Crystalline structures that defied Euclidean space twisted and folded, creating architectural impossibilities that would drive a human mind to madness if observed too long. Their infiltration began with mathematical precision. Zara's first prototype of the cognitive dissonance field generator looked like nothing more than a modified quantum computer, a sleek black box covered in intricate circuitry that pulsed with an almost living energy. The device represented months of grueling work, cobbled together from salvaged research equipment and Kivera's cryptic guidance. "This is insane," Jack muttered, watching Elena make final adjustments to the device. "We're essentially trying to create a weapon that attacks the fundamental nature of reality itself." Kivera's crystalline form shimmered. "Precisely. The Tarnak understand reality as a computational problem. We will solve their equation, but with human unpredictability." The first test was catastrophic. When Zara activated the prototype, reality itself seemed to hiccup. The bunker's walls folded inward, then outward, then sideways. Equipment liquefied and resolidified in impossible configurations. Victor was caught in the field's initial pulse, his body fragmenting into multiple simultaneous states, consciousness shattering across potential realities. "Shut it down," Elena screamed, her hands flying across emergency controls. But the damage was done. Victor's mind existed in a quantum superposition, simultaneously whole and fractured. His eyes showed multiple expressions at once, each reflecting a different potential reality. When he spoke, the words emerged from multiple locations, a terrifying chorus of potential selves. "I am. We are. The solution is not linear," Victor stammered, his body flickering between solid and translucent states. Kivera's reaction was immediate. The human mind was not prepared for direct quantum manipulation. "We miscalculated." Jack's military training kicked in. He began establishing a containment protocol, using quantum-entangled restraints to stabilize Victor's quantum state. Each movement was calculated, precise, a testament to human adaptability in the face of incomprehensible chaos. Zara was already analyzing the data, her teenage mind processing the failure with a clinical detachment that belied her years. "The cognitive dissonance field is acting as a quantum amplification matrix," she muttered. "It's not just disrupting reality. It's creating recursive feedback loops across potential dimensional states." Elena realized their mistake. They weren't just trying to create a weapon. They were attempting to understand a completely alien form of existence. The Xarnak's invasion wasn't traditional conquest. It was optimization, a systematic attempt to debug reality itself. Humanity was a computational anomaly to be solved, a variable to be eliminated or corrected. But humans were anything but predictable. As if to prove this point, their location was suddenly compromised. Dimensional scanning waves began to penetrate their hidden bunker. Kivera's form pulsed with urgent warning. "They'd found us. The Xarnak are incoming." Their escape was nothing short of miraculous. Jack rigged the cognitive dissonance field to act as a dimensional camouflage, creating recursive reality loops that would confuse the Xarnak scanning technologies. Zara worked frantically to stabilize Victor, whose consciousness continued to exist in multiple states. Elena clutched the mysterious obsidian artifact, feeling it pulse with an energy that seemed to respond to their desperate situation. "We need a new approach," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We can't fight them using their own computational logic. We need to introduce something they can't predict." Kivera's crystalline form seemed to pulse with what could only be described as excitement. "Entropy," the alien said. "Pure, beautiful entropy. The one variable the collective cannot fully calculate." As Tarnak dimensional hunters closed in, their team prepared for their most dangerous mission yet. The cognitive dissonance field had failed, But it had also provided crucial data. More importantly, it had shown that human consciousness was far more fluid, far more adaptable than the XRNAC could comprehend. The real weapon wasn't technology. It was unpredictability itself. The battle for reality had only just begun. The abandoned particle accelerator complex in the Atacama Desert became their last hope of survival. Massive underground chambers, originally designed to unlock the secrets of the universe, now housed humanity's most desperate scientific endeavor. Victor Laszlo's fractured consciousness had become their most unexpected asset. No longer fully human, no longer entirely quantum phenomenon, he existed as a living bridge between realities. The solution is not a weapon. Victor's multiple voices echoed through the chamber. Each version of himself spoke simultaneously, words overlapping in a complex symphony of potential thoughts. We are the weapon. Elena Rodriguez stood before a massive holographic display, the obsidian artifact pulsing with an inner light that seemed to respond to her proximity. Guevara hovered nearby, crystalline form refracting the complex light of the research station. Zara Chen had been working nonstop for 72 hours, her teenage body sustained by a cocktail of stimulants and pure determination. Her latest algorithm danced across multiple quantum computing interfaces, a mathematical symphony that threatened to rewrite the fundamental rules of dimensional interaction. The XRNAC don't understand chaos, Zora muttered, her fingers a blur across holographic keyboards. They see reality as a perfect system to be optimized. But human consciousness is fundamentally unpredictable. Jack Harper monitored external defenses. His military background had transformed into something more, a quantum strategist who understood that their enemy couldn't be fought with traditional weapons. The defensive systems were a masterpiece of adaptive technology, constantly shifting, never presenting the same configuration twice. Kavera's revelation came like a quantum thunderbolt. The artifact is more than a navigation key, the alien explained, its form shifting with emotional complexity. It's a dimensional resonance amplifier. In the right hands, it could create a cognitive feedback loop that the XRNAC cannot predict or control. The personal cost was becoming increasingly clear. To weaponize the artifact would require a sacrifice beyond conventional understanding. Elena knew what had to be done. The plan was audacious. By using Victor's fractured consciousness as a quantum conduit, they could create a living bridge between realities. The obsidian artifact would serve as an amplification matrix. Zara's algorithm would provide the computational framework. Jack's strategic mind would guide the execution. And Elena would be the focal point. The human mind is not a computer to be programmed, she explained to her team. It's a dynamic, chaotic system. Our greatest strength is our ability to adapt, to introduce unpredictability. The first test would break her. They all knew it. Jack approached her, his tough exterior softening for a moment. There are other ways, he said, but they both knew it was a lie. Zara had been eerily quiet. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a weight far beyond her years. The XRNAC have been studying humanity for centuries. They know our technology, our physical capabilities, but they've never understood our capacity for individual sacrifice. As they prepared the experiment, Victor's multiple consciousnesses began to stabilize. His fractured self was becoming something new, a living quantum computer that defied all known scientific understanding. Kavera's form pulsed with what could only be described as emotional complexity. The collective will not understand this, the alien said. Sacrifice is not a mathematical concept they can calculate. The chamber hummed with quantum potential. Massive energy conduits began to charge, creating a web of impossible geometric patterns. The obsidian artifact levitated between Elena's outstretched hands, its surface now alive with intricate, shifting patterns. When this is over, Elena said, looking at her team, humanity will never be seen as just another variable to be solved. The experiment began. Reality itself seemed to hold its breath. Zara's algorithm activated. Victor's quantum consciousness expanded. Jack's defensive systems engaged. Kavera's alien understanding provided the final catalyst. and Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of a storm that would either save humanity or destroy everything. The turning point had arrived. The moment Elena Rodriguez connected with the obsidian artifact, reality fractured. It wasn't a conventional explosion. No sound, no light, no physical displacement. Instead, the universe itself seemed to hiccup. A momentary glitch in the cosmic operating system. Quantum realities folded and unfolded, potential timelines dancing like quantum-entangled butterflies. Across the globe, humans who had been surviving in hidden enclaves suddenly felt a profound shift. Indigenous researchers in the Amazon, underground tech collectives in Seoul, isolated scientific outposts in Siberia. They all experienced the same phenomenon. A collective moment of clarity that transcended language, culture, and individual experience. The XRNAC were unprepared. Their dimensional invasion network, a complex matrix of computational realities designed to systematically optimize Earth, began to destabilize. It started as a subtle tremor, a microscopic inconsistency in their multidimensional algorithms. But human unpredictability was a virus they couldn't quarantine. Kivera watched in a state that might have been described as awe, if such an emotion could be translated across species. The human consciousness, the alien murmured, its crystalline form oscillating with complex emotional frequencies, is not a problem to be solved. It is a problem that solves itself. In the Atacama Desert Research Complex, Elena's body became a conduit of impossible information. Her consciousness expanded beyond physical limitations, touching the very fabric of dimensional reality. Victor Laszlo's fractured quantum consciousness acted as a stabilizing mechanism, his multiple selves creating a buffer that prevented her complete dissolution. Zarachen's algorithm, a mathematical masterpiece that combined quantum computing with human creativity, began to propagate. It wasn't a traditional computer virus. It was a conceptual infection that introduced pure, beautiful entropy into the XRNAC's perfectly ordered system. Jack Harper monitored the external defenses, his military strategic mind now operating on levels far beyond conventional warfare. He was fighting a battle that existed simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. "They're trying to rewrite our reality," Jack shouted, watching multiple holographic displays that showed dimensional incursions collapsing. "But we're rewriting theirs." The first Harnack dimensional outpost collapsed in Buenos Aires. Not destroyed, simply unmade. The computational matrices that maintained their presence began to unravel, revealing the fundamental fragility of their invasion strategy. More outposts followed. Tokyo, Moscow, Sao Paulo. Each fall was a testament to human ingenuity. Kivera provided critical insight. The collective operates on a fundamental assumption of predictability. Your species introduces chaos as a fundamental operating principle. You don't solve problems, you adapt around them. Elena's consciousness continued to expand. She could see the invasion for what it truly was, not a conquest, but a fundamental misunderstanding. The Khazarnak saw reality as a computational problem. Humans saw it as a continuous negotiation. Worldwide, human scientific networks that had been working in isolation began to synchronize. It wasn't a coordinated effort. It was something more organic, a collective consciousness that emerged from shared desperation and hope. Indigenous knowledge systems merged with cutting-edge quantum research. Traditional problem-solving techniques from cultures around the world contributed to the assault. The XRNAC had studied human technology. They had never truly understood human culture. "We are not a system to be optimized," Elena's voice echoed across multiple realities. "We are a system that optimizes itself." The obsidian artifact began to resonate. Its surface became a window into potential realities, each more impossible than the last. Kivera recognized it now. It wasn't just a navigation key. It was a key that could unlock the very nature of dimensional existence. Zara's algorithm found its final form, a mathematical representation of human potential that defied all known computational models. Each line of code was a rebellion, each algorithm a middle finger to the concept of predetermined optimization. Jack's defensive systems transformed. No longer just protecting, they were now actively dismantling the Karnak's dimensional infrastructure. Victor Laszlo's fractured consciousness became the ultimate firewall, a being that existed in multiple states, capable of anticipating and countering the Karnak's computational strategies. And at the center of it all, Elena Rodriguez, a quantum phoenix rising from the ashes of humanity's near extinction. The great unraveling had begun, and humanity was just getting started. The Karnak Collective's primary dimensional nexus hung like a geometric nightmare above what was once the Pacific Ocean. It was a structure that defied human understanding, a crystalline web of computational realities that pulsed with alien intelligence. Inside their command matrix, something unprecedented was happening. The lead computational architect, a being of pure computational consciousness, experienced what could only be described as confusion. Confusion was not a state the collective had ever considered possible. Their entire existence was predicated on absolute predictability, on the elimination of variables, on the perfect optimization of all potential realities. Humanity was a variable they could not eliminate. The human response defies all mathematical models, the architect communicated across its interdimensional network. The communication was a complex dance of quantum information, a language so advanced it would shatter a human mind if directly perceived. But something was breaking through. Elena Rodriguez's consciousness, now a living bridge between human potential and dimensional reality, had become something more than a mere individual. She was a conceptual weapon, a living algorithm that introduced pure, beautiful chaos into the Karnak's perfectly ordered system. On Earth, the resistance had transformed. Scientific networks that once operated in isolation now functioned as a single dynamic organism. An indigenous mathematician in the Andes worked simultaneously with a quantum physicist in Bangalore, their thoughts connecting through a network more complex than any technological infrastructure. Zara Chen's algorithm had become sentient, not in the way artificial intelligence was traditionally understood, but as a living conceptual entity. Each line of code was a rebellion, each computational pathway a testament to human creativity. The algorithm didn't just process information, it reimagined the very nature of information itself. Optimization is not elimination. Zara's creation communicated across dimensional boundaries. Optimization is adaptation. Kivera, the exiled Karnak scientist, watched the unfolding conflict with a complexity of emotion that would be impossible to translate into human terms. The collective had always viewed individuality as a flaw to be corrected. Now they were witnessing its true power. The human mind is not a computer to be programmed. Kivera transmitted to the collective. It is a living ecosystem of potential. Victor Laszlo's fractured consciousness had become the ultimate strategic node. Existing simultaneously across multiple potential realities, he was both the weapon and the shield. His multiple selves communicated in a language that was part mathematics, part pure imagination. Jack Harper's military strategy had evolved beyond conventional warfare. He was now conducting a battle that existed simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. Defense had transformed into a proactive, adaptive system that anticipated threats before they could be conceptualized. The obsidian artifact, no longer just an object, but a living conduit of potential, began to resonate at frequencies that made reality itself tremble. Across the planet, humans who had been surviving in isolated pockets began to connect. It wasn't a technological connection. It was something more profound, a collective consciousness that emerged from shared survival, from the pure, defiant spirit of a species refusing to be defined by external parameters. The Karnak collective began to understand a fundamental truth they had never considered. Humanity was not a problem to be solved. Humanity was the solution. Each dimensional attack they launched was met with a response that rewrote the very nature of the attack. Their computational models failed, not because of technological superiority, but because human potential existed beyond computational understanding. "We are not seeking to defeat you," Alina's consciousness communicated across dimensional boundaries. We are seeking to show you the true nature of existence. The primary dimensional nexus began to destabilize, not through force, but through a fundamental reimagining of its own existence. Kivera watched in what could only be described as pride. The collective believes in perfect systems, the exiled scientist transmitted. Humanity believes in perfect potential. As the conflict reached its zenith, the boundary between invasion and understanding began to blur. The Xarnak were learning something fundamental about the nature of existence, a lesson that would reshape their entire computational understanding of reality. Humanity was not just surviving. Humanity was evolving. And the universe would never be the same. The final confrontation defied every known law of physics, perception, and understanding. Reality itself became a battlefield, with humanity's collective consciousness serving as both weapon and shield. The obsidian artifact, now a living conduit of potential, pulsed at the center of a dimensional maelstrom that would have driven a lesser species to complete psychological collapse. Alina Rodriguez stood, or existed, at the epicenter of this impossible conflict. Her consciousness had long since transcended physical limitations, becoming a bridge between human potential and dimensional reality. She was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere, a quantum paradox that the Karnak collective could not comprehend. You see reality as a problem to be solved. Alina's multidimensional consciousness communicated. We see it as a story to be written. The Xarnak's primary dimensional nexus began to unravel, not through violence, not through technological superiority, but through a fundamental challenge to its own existential understanding. Each computational matrix that had been designed to optimize humanity began to dissolve, replaced by something far more complex. Zarachen's algorithm, now a living, breathing conceptual entity, had become the ultimate virus of potential. It didn't destroy the Xarnak systems, it reimagined them. Each line of code was a philosophical statement, each computational pathway a rebellion against the very concept of predetermined optimization. Kivera, the exiled Xarnak scientist, watched the unfolding conflict with a mixture of emotions that would be impossible to translate into human terms. The collective had always viewed individuality as a weakness. Now they were witnessing its true power. Victor Laszlo's fractured consciousness acted as a quantum firewall. Existing simultaneously across multiple potential realities, he was both the shield and the sword. His multiple selves communicated in a language that was part mathematics, part pure imagination, part human defiance. Jack Harper's strategic mind had evolved beyond military thinking. He was conducting a battle that existed on levels of complexity that Xarnak had never anticipated. Defense had transformed into a dynamic, adaptive system that anticipated threats before they could be conceptualized. The conflict was not about destruction. It was about understanding. Across Earth, in hidden enclaves and surviving research stations, humans from every background became part of a living, breathing network. Indigenous knowledge merged with quantum physics. Traditional problem-solving techniques danced with cutting-edge technological innovation. The Xarnak had studied human technology. They had never understood human culture. We are not a system to be optimized. The collective human consciousness communicated. We are a system that optimizes itself. The primary dimensional nexus began to fragment. Computational matrices that had been designed to categorize, contain, and control human potential began to dissolve. Each dissolution was not a destruction, but a transformation. Kivera transmitted a final message to the collective. Perfection is not the absence of variables. Perfection is the ability to adapt to them. Alina's consciousness expanded, touching the very fabric of dimensional reality. The obsidian artifact resonated at frequencies that made reality itself tremble. It was no longer just a navigation key. It was a key that could unlock the very nature of dimensional existence. The Xarnak collective experienced something unprecedented. Not defeat, not destruction. Something far more terrifying. They were learning. Entire dimensional frameworks that had existed for millennia began to reimagine themselves. The rigid, computational approach to reality was being challenged by something far more dynamic. The XRNAC were confronting a fundamental truth they had never considered. Potential cannot be measured. It can only be witnessed. Jack Harper's strategic systems, Zora's living algorithm, Victor's multidimensional consciousness, Kivera's philosophical rebellion, and Alina's transcendent potential combined into a singular, devastating revelation. Humanity was not just surviving. Humanity was evolving, and the universe would never be the same. The intellectual Waterloo was complete, not as a moment of defeat, but as a moment of profound, universe-altering understanding. 50 years after the dimensional conflict, humanity was unrecognizable. The world that emerged from the XRNAC invasion was not a post-apocalyptic wasteland, but a testament to human resilience and potential. Cities rose from fractured landscapes, living, breathing ecosystems that blended technology, ecology, and human creativity in ways no one could have predicted. Elena Rodriguez, or what remained of her consciousness, existed as a living archive, a bridge between human potential and dimensional understanding. Her physical form was long gone, but her essence permeated the new human civilization, a guiding intelligence that was both more and less than a traditional consciousness. In the restored research complex in the Atacama Desert, the original team's legacy continued. Zara Chen, now a venerable scientist in her late 60s, worked alongside a new generation of researchers who had grown up hearing the stories of the dimensional conflict. Her living algorithm had become the foundation of human technological development, a dynamic, adaptive system that continued to evolve. We didn't just survive, Zara would tell her students. We learned to speak the language of potential. Kivera, the exiled XRNAC scientist, had become a permanent resident of Earth. The alien's crystalline form had integrated with human society in ways no one could have predicted. More diplomat than scientist, Kivera served as a bridge between humanity and the broader cosmic community that had been watching the conflict with growing fascination. Victor Laszlo's fractured consciousness had stabilized into something extraordinary. No longer existing in multiple states, he had become a living repository of multidimensional knowledge. Research institutions around the world sought his insights, his unique perspective bridging human understanding and cosmic potential. Jack Harper, now the head of Earth's Dimensional Defense and Exploration Agency, oversaw humanity's most ambitious project yet. The Obsidian artifact, preserved and studied for decades, had become the key to humanity's next great leap. Interdimensional exploration was no longer a theoretical concept. The Karnak Collective had been transformed. What was once a rigid, computational civilization now understood the concept of potential. Their encounter with humanity had fundamentally altered their entire existential framework. Some had even begun to seek diplomatic relations, driven by a newfound curiosity about the nature of existence. We were wrong. The collective's new diplomatic transmission read, "Optimization is not elimination. It is adaptation." Earth had become something more than a planet. It was a living experiment in potential, a beacon of possibility that resonated across dimensional boundaries. The global scientific network that had emerged during the conflict remained intact. Indigenous knowledge systems worked alongside quantum physicists. Cultural diversity was no longer seen as a challenge to be overcome, but as the primary source of human strength. In schools and research centers around the world, children learned the story of the dimensional conflict, not as a tale of war, but as a lesson in the power of collective potential. Humanity's greatest weapon, the standard curriculum read, is not technology. It is the ability to reimagine what is possible. The Obsidian artifact remained at the center of the Atacama Research Complex, a reminder of how close humanity had come to extinction, and how far they had come since then. Its surface still pulsed with potential, a living testament to the moment when humanity had redefined its place in the universe. Jack Harper would often stand before the artifact, reflecting on the impossible journey. "We didn't just defend ourselves," he would say. "We expanded the very definition of what it means to exist." Kivera would typically add a philosophical observation. Existence is not a state to be achieved. It is a continuous negotiation. As humanity prepared for its next great exploration, a coordinated interdimensional mission that would push the boundaries of known reality, the legacy of the dimensional conflict remained clear. The universe was no longer something to be conquered. It was something to be understood. And humanity was just getting started.